So tonight we have a difficult topic. It's not easy for me to talk about this, but I feel it's very prevalent in the news, and it's something that we cannot totally ignore, even if it's unpleasant. So we're gonna talk about the dark side of the children's entertainment industry.
Yes.
And there's some stuff about Nickelodeon lately, but obviously there's been stuff all over.
There's been scandals. And now I would just not leave it to the teens industry of entertainment, because it's been Nickelodeon is part and Disney is part of Hollywood. So it's throughout the whole industry of entertainment. But anyways, we're going to start with Nickelodeon right now. And as you mentioned, this has been going around since I can remember. I'm an 80s kid. So
even before that.
Yeah. And this is the thing. When these teenager programs or shows started coming out, one of the ideas or how they wanted to sell it was like a safe thing for home. See what I'm saying? Something you could watch with your family. It was a family entertainment show. So
it's disgusting to really realize what's going behind the scenes, and what you thought was a wholesome show for the family, like you said. The juxtaposition of the two realities, what we were being fed and what these kids had to go through, is really just horrible. It's just disgusting. It's hypocritical. But as you mentioned, there is an interview with Shirley Temple and Larry King, and she's talking about that. And Shirley Temple she was acting in the 50s, and she was just a cute little girl. I'm not sure what her decade was, but even before me, it was like my parents mentioned her. And she's talking about how one time some producers tried to, just harass her and her mother. And they separated them, a studio executive, like in an interview. And I think that that's the thing with the children that are acting. There has to be a program, a group, something that's made by Hollywood, an association, kind of like a guild, something that protects the children. There has to be more laws and regulations. First of all, just even having them work that much.
And there are actually laws for that. The second question I would ask would be, where are the parents? How involved are they? Because supposedly the kids cannot sign any contracts. They actually do it through their guardians, in this case, the parents, most of the times. So where are they? A lot of these parents obviously benefit from this as well.
And that's the thing. Parents, I don't know if they work, if they just trust the industry, kind of like, I don't know how involved they are, but certainly not too much, because if they're getting abused.
So I was reading about that. So this is the thing, when any kid, I think if you're 2 years old or younger, you can only work 2 hours a day. When you're older than that, you can work up to 4 hours a day. When you're a teenager, then you can actually work up to 8 hours a day if you're 16 and over.
But why are we hearing all these reports of these kids that didn't even go to school, that were being worked constantly? Maybe on the set they can't work more than certain hours, but all the promotions, all the sometimes they gotta go promote their shows. It seems from the interviews, and I'm not like expert here or anything, but it seems when you hear the interviews of these kids, they said they were overworked. There's no way it was just 6 hours or 4 hours.
So going back to your initial point, are there any laws? Of course, there are laws. There are actually entertainment laws that they have to follow, state laws. Again,
but they're not really followed, is what I'm saying.
I'm sure there's some gray area amongst them that's where the industry wants to take advantage of. Because, for example, I just mentioned earlier that if you're 2 years old or younger, if you're a kid, literally a baby, you cannot work more than 2 hours. So how do they get around this? They started hiring twins. And this way, they were paying the parents or the family overall double of that what they were going to get, but now they're overworking. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So And most of the times, a lot of these kids now that are adults, like Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, that are,
Selena Gomez.
yeah, they're starting coming out and started saying all these things that they had to go
All
through.
the abuse.
But I want to focus a lot in the 90s because
Mhm.
that's when I think a lot of these things started to come out. And before then, and even in the 90s, a lot of this behavior was normal, unfortunately.
Not only was it normal, it was glamorized. It was like, oh, how cool, if your kid worked there or for the family. It was not viewed as like right now. Anyone views it as, oh my gosh, I hope that kid, there's a different outlook. In the 90s, it was like the coolest thing. You were a child actor. Wow, great,
Yeah. Yeah, this is when TV was everything. When we didn't have anything else and TV owned the whole entertainment industry and system
There was
overall.
no YouTube. There was nothing else to
Yeah.
stream.
So that was it. That was the only thing we had. So those were your idols, the people you followed through TV shows. So anyways, there's a documentary. It's called On the Set, and it actually talks about Nickelodeon, all the shows that
Quiet on the set.
Quiet on the Set, and they talk about a lot of things that happened during the 90s, and it's very interesting to see how all this turned out. But anyways, there was one guy, he was the leader of a lot of the shows. He was the creator and their writer. His name is Dan Schneider. And I was watching some of this documentary footage, and he used to hug kids, and he was actually in a bathtub with a younger, like really young girl that was not even 16. She was probably 14. He was recording himself with her in the bathtub.
And his whole appearance, I mean, just to tell you the truth, the same thing with Harvey Weinstein, very, you know what I'm saying? Like, it almost feels like, okay, so maybe these guys were using little kids because they couldn't get maybe adults to be with them. They have this energy to them and this appearance that's frankly quite unpleasant. But they surround themselves with kids and in their jobs. It's the perfect predatory place if you're really fucked up.
Yeah, so let's go back again. 90s, the only thing that was leading the entertainment industry was TV or radio. I think radio was dying already in the 90s. So mainly TV. That was it. So this was the life that everybody wanted. This was the opportunity for a lot of families to actually get an income or for life have something to stand by. You see what I'm saying?
But then these kids, you see them these days, and
a lot of them actually turn out.
They're not working anymore because they can't.
Or they're mentally
exactly because of those things. They can't. I mean, they're not as productive as they were when they were kids. Why? Because they're suffering from mental health problems.
And let's talk about this human trafficking. What is human trafficking? It's labor, service. You're exploiting somebody for labor or service. And later we're going to talk about sex as well, but focus on the labor and services. A lot of this happened in Nickelodeon and Disney and overall Hollywood. But Nickelodeon in this documentary, actually, a lot of them come out and saying that they were being overworked. That
the whole atmosphere too was very unpleasant to work with. The writers' rooms, pornography was always playing. The writers' rooms. There was a lot of harassment to the women writers. Like if you were a writer in the show, they were harassed. And there was just this hostile environment for women, especially.
Yeah, there's an example of a lady, I forgot her name, but she's a writer. And they hired 2 writers. And they were paying for both of them the wage for one. So they had to split the income
because Dan Schneider would also say that women aren't too funny. As a writer, they don't like write funny shit, and it just seems like such a systematic put down of women in that environment that he created, and then with little girls, imagine.
So let's talk about this guy, Dan Schneider. He had so much power.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one that actually chose the actors and made them stars if he wanted to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giving
Those shows,
somebody,
do you remember those shows, Nickelodeon? Let's just talk a little bit about that. Why he was such a star. Why Schneider was so popular and so amazing during his era is, do you remember Nickelodeon being all about the slime and all, like they made really, do you remember that they would like slime and,
oh yeah,
and
yeah,
all
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah.
It was like a very
Talk about the
fun,
design.
it was a very fun
Cool,
and
cool, cool.
dynamic thing that he had going on, and he always talked about school rules and kind of like Saved by the Bell kind of stuff. You know, it was very school and kids and very
Fun,
fun.
very new,
Mm-hmm.
new age, new mentality. They were making jokes.
They would
Even
hit adults. They would hit
Yeah.
adults with the slime. They would with the pies. There were like some like pies that you would get hit on the face. So it was very almost like edgy and disrespectful towards adults sometimes. You know, like the kids were running the show, and in school or second code. You know, I just remember that the whole thing was kids had a lot of power. That
Mhm.
was like the idea from those shows, and they were just a huge sensation. My daughters loved all the Nickelodeon shows. iCarly, Second Code. I mean, all of them. They were Victoria, Sam and Cat, all that. The Amanda Show. They loved them.
So you mentioned you mentioned Saved by the Bell. This is from the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
You
It starts
remember
in the
that
80s.
one?
I just
Yeah.
remember in the early 90s. Do you remember this guy that recently, unfortunately, passed? Screech. Screech, remember him?
Yes. Screech
Uh,
was so like such a geek.
So he actually mentioned something that happened during those recording years. I think he was homosexual, and he was being discriminated for that
Oh.
in during the set, and nobody said nothing. Why? Because back in those years, it was awareness was not there yet. I mean, there
No.
was, but it wasn't really implemented. And going back to the 90s, that's when all these girls that were kids and they started growing up, like Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera, they started becoming more sexual type of looking themselves, and they took advantage of it. For example, Britney Spears reminded me a lot of Madonna. Like she was taking over that same personality character, and she actually owned it, and she took it to the next level and bring her a lot of fame and popularity and economic. But where is she now? Where's Britney Spears?
I know. I mean, we haven't talked about that, but with the whole conservatorship that she had with her father and all that scandal where
And
she was just
how is
yeah.
she mentally?
Yeah, no, and there's of course Justin Bieber and who was Britney's old boyfriend?
Justin Timberlake.
Timberlake
So,
too.
what do
Like,
you
did
think
you
of-
read about what he supposedly made Britney do?
Yeah.
Like get an abortion, and he was always cheating on her. It was just a very toxic culture in between the teenagers as well. It seems like these 16, 17-year-olds were living the life of adults, and you know, like
We had to-
cheating scandals, abortions.
We had to do
Normally
a lot
it's-
with they had money, they were independent already at a really young age. They were exposed to all these type of things. Unfortunately, those things happen even if you're not in that environment.
I know
That
they do.
happens amongst our society.
They do, but it
in our
seems-
neighborhood.
It seems like the artists normalized all of these things, you know, like they made them, you're reading them on the paper. They just made it normal for a 16-year-old, 17-year-old to have these kind of problems. Remember when MTV had this show called Pregnant and Alone or something like that?
Yeah, it's about. Yeah, I remember
They were
also had shows-
glamorizing things like teenage
single
pregnancies,
moms.
and single moms, and who's gonna hook up with
like
her
teenager
afterwards.
single moms, yeah.
Yes, and it's just, I mean, I know those things happen. They've happened forever, 200 years ago. Yes, but it's not like it's the first time that I think as a society we try to glamorize them. We try to glamorize those problems as somehow cool.
I
You
think
know, Because it's like a reality show and they're following you and you become a little bit famous and all that.
They're also trying to make it seem more normal than what it is. I think that was the whole objective of making these type of shows, right? It's like, okay, these things happen because
They
at one
normalized
point
it.
they were literally not being accepted by society. Single moms, or if you were pregnant at a young
15.
age or something like that. It was like, oh no, she's done for her life. And I think MTV,
Maybe.
the objective was to
But
make it more.
you know how things go. They can go both ways. You know, you can glamorize something or you can just normalize it. And usually it tends to go. I felt like, I don't know. I wasn't sure that was great. The kids were watching this and making it like that glamorized.
Well, this was more in the 2000s, from what I remember. I think that's when more awareness started coming out, right? Because these type of things of what I saw in the Nickelodeon documentary of this guy that was hugging 14-year-olds and recording himself with him in the 90s, he was like, it wasn't even penalized at all. They were seeing it like something maybe not normal, but not bad. So I think that's 2000s. That's when, okay, we need to actually worry about.
We need to address this. Well, there was also someone on staff who was a coach, a dialogue coach, that actually sexually abused one of the stars, Drake Bell. And Drake came out and talked about it. And what happened is that this guy, the dialogue coach, Brian Peck, he was actually sentenced to probation and jail, I think, and all these things. And then he continued working there afterwards.
So here's the thing.
So that's the cover up. That's what's really scandalous.
So this was the story behind this guy. He was in jail for child molesting before. He comes out of jail. He goes back doing the same thing. But Nickelodeon hired him. I don't know if they did their full background check or anything like that, but he actually went and worked with them with kids.
Bam.
And I think he's still in jail until like 2030 something because of the same thing. So
really, because he kept doing stuff.
Who hired this guy?
Well, the thing is, the industry, the children entertainment industry, is going to be a magnet for pedos, right? And people need to do a better job. That's why they're blaming the big companies, Nickelodeon, Disney. You need to do a better job of screening and not exploitation. All of these things really do need to change. There needs to be a big movement to protect the children. I know technically it may exist already, but I feel like PETA does more for the animals, you know, when they get organized. There's nothing like we know more about that organization than something that I don't even know what the name of an organization to protect children in the industry is, what the name is, because there's no, I guess there's always money been involved with the parents, hush hush money for the kids, for the parents, that's where you don't hear all the outcry.
Or they just blindside all these type of things on purpose.
But I think people are realizing that no amount of money can really just clean up your fucked upness. Like if you've been abused as a kid, especially by someone you trusted, like a dialogue coach or your producer or someone that was supposed to, protect you in a way, was bringing you fame, yes, and all these things, but they weren't supposed to be assaulting you, you know? And I think that once people have realized no amount of money can compensate for all the things that are broken now inside some of these kids.
Well, yeah, it's really easy to say it, especially right now. Here we are doing a podcast about it. When you're in that situation, when you come from probably nothing, and the only thing you see opportunity was for your life and for your family, it's a big contract with some Hollywood company.
But now there's more awareness. I don't think parents would do it because before, yes, the money was good, but you didn't imagine these things would happen.
Did. I think
in the beginning when they were signing, they were probably just
not when they're signing, but
now the difference is now parents kind of know that these things could happen.
I think they knew when back in the 90s too, and when they were signing these contracts. This is nothing new. We mentioned it from the 50s, 60s,
I'm gonna
70s,
tell you, I had three
80s,
girls and they were
90s.
dancers. Sometimes in like their dance studio and their ballet, jazz, tap dance studio, they would have recruiters. The typical stand that would put in there, you want to be part of a commercial, want to be part of Disney. They would come and recruit children at, dance places, girls like ballerinas and all that. And they would promote the headshots, right? You were going to buy a package for your daughter to possibly participate in a Disney show, and it cost you $500 to do the pictures and all that. I remember being lobbied by my girls. Mommy, we want to be part of it. Look, they're coming to, and I want to, and I'm going to try out. And what if I'm famous? And, and I remember me thinking, I never thought they're going to get sexually exploited. I remember thinking, that life I don't want for them. I want them to have their childhood. I don't want them to be like audition after audition, work after work, and it becoming also my life. It was like, what I'm going to be there waiting on their, no, that's not what I want for me, for my kids. But I talked to a lot of moms that were part of the ballet school too. And, it was a big deal. They were coming, the scouters, and I don't think there was this sense. And I was raising my kids in the 2000s, right? 2000 to 2010. I don't think there was this sense that they were going to be sexually exploited. Maybe we were more concerned about child labor laws, just exploited in terms of a lot of work. But I don't think that in my mind, one of the reasons of like, no, you're not going to do this was there's sexual things going on.
I get what you're saying, but where I'm going to is that information. It's out there, and it's been out there
now. Yeah.
And if you really look into it, and it's been throughout the whole industry, entertainment industry. We can talk about Hollywood. How back in the 60s and 70s, there is a producer and director that actually came out on giving an interview where he said he had a bedroom in his office. So
for the auditions.
Yeah. If you really wanted to make it to be the first actor or actress, because it could be both ways, you probably need to sleep with this guy. Unfortunately, it's in the history books. I'm not making this up. So it's been happening.
You're right, because a lot of dads, especially fathers, would always say, I don't want my daughter to be a Hollywood starlet. Even in the 50s, 60s, because they knew, especially like fathers that are protectors, they knew what could happen. They're usually called like, like sluts, whatever, because they have to sleep around with many to be able to make it in Hollywood.
And it happens on for men and women or teenagers. On our case, we had this information for a big star named Gloria Trevi. She's Mexican, and all this came out in the late 90s.
Do you remember Tatiana?
We already knew the whole story in the late 90s. So you and I were still teenagers when we knew about this. This is the thing. Sometimes we just are not even aware of it, or we don't want to be involved, not involved. We don't want to be informed of it because it's just too much to take. So much too much information that we think that there's not human beings that could do these things. But there are.
And back then, also, I'm just going to say that, growing up in the 80s, back then, a 15, 16-year-old girl that was glamorized to look like what you said, Britney Spears, looked like a Madonna.
Yeah.
That was super sexualized. She looked like a 30-year-old woman or a 24-year-old woman at least, 25. Back then, we would just see, oh, well, she's going out with an older man. Makes sense. She's so beautiful. He's so powerful. Like, we wouldn't think beyond those things. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, makes sense. Remember Tatiana, the Mexican artist? Like, okay, well, she was in the same situation. Producer that was like tripled her age, whatever. And she was a child, like she would sing songs for children. The Tatianas were like children's songs, and they would always dress her up like a little clown and like a little doll. And it's so weird because, like you said, it was right in front of her faces, and it was children entertainment. Yet if you saw her personal life, she was involved with a much older man that was her producer.
But if you see there's a trend amongst a lot of these kids, and a lot of them are celebrity kids that end up, for some reason, you're like, dude, this person has everything in terms of money, fame, all the luxury things you can think of that we don't have, or just regular people like me don't have. You're like, their life is perfect.
That's the thing. When we started equating life as perfect with material things, that's when everything just started. It becomes like a sliding scale in terms of, I'm going to put up with this just because I have that.
Yeah.
Because I have a car, I'm going to put up with this. And that materialism that was very prevalent in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, I think is something that the new generations are starting to realize that may not be worth it. You know, all these new kids that want a tiny home. They don't want a car. They're going to walk or do Uber. They don't care about cars. They don't care about big mortgage. They care about being backpacker, having a job for 6 months, just enough to save so that the other 3 months they travel.
I know.
You know?
But that is a really low percentage. And you know how I measure
Really,
that? You know where the metrics
I see my
come?
daughters talking about it all the time.
Yeah. But you know where I get this metrics? Instagram. Most of the times, they do, a lot of these people love attention. And they post some type of pictures, videos, whatever it is that brings them this attention. So yeah, you can have all these cool ideas, philosophical ways of looking at life, sin and all this other stuff. Cool. Do you really live that life? Or do you just doing it because it's trendy and people are doing it?
And that's the thing. Remember the girl, the influencer that got killed hiking, and she was portraying this life that she was going in her van with her boyfriend, and it was like perfect. And then they found her dead. You know, they found her dead body, and the boyfriend wasn't really that great. Nobody could have ever guessed by her posts that she was in an abusive relationship like that, because people are putting only what they want people to see. Yeah.
So this is the thing. I think it's a human thing that we like attention. Most of us, at least, we like attention. And there's a big saying of, and still until now in my 40s, I still care for some fucking reason. But don't worry about what other people think about you. Even though some people are going to criticize you without even knowing you, or you're not going to see them ever again, you should not worry about what other things about you. But for some reason, we do worry about it. We do put a lot of emphasis on these type of things. And that's why we always post when we're happy, or we're eating a great meal somewhere, where we are in an expensive place, and when we're at the beach, or when we do things like that. So the persons that actually don't share any of those things, I would believe them when they're like, I don't need none of that shit. I actually live my life the way I want to do it. But anyway, so that's where I get my metrics from. That the majority, at least people that I know, we all have either some type of social media platform where we share.
Yeah. But we're old, though. I mean, I'm talking about the new generations. They are starting to branch out with alternatives.
Changes.
Yeah.
Hopefully that changes. But let's get back to the topic where we're talking about the industry and how teenagers are affected, and how moms and dads and siblings play a big role amongst these kids that are stars at a really young age.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine the family dynamic. Imagine if the mom suspects that something's going on.
Well, remember that time that we talked about,
and you come back home and you don't tell your husband, like, what's going on with the family dynamic?
And the husband doesn't want to know. The dad doesn't want to know about it. But let's talk about, and this happens not just in the, right now we're talking about the entertainment industry. This happens in sports.
Yes.
This happens a lot.
Modeling.
Modeling. So last time we talked about a band in the 80s, big boys band called Menudo, that is a perfect example, unfortunately, about abusive environment, about exploiting people, about human trafficking. Again, human trafficking is not just sexual. A lot of us related to that because that's the worst, but it could be just labor and services like that. Right. So in this case, unfortunately, a lot of those kids were sexually abused. By who? The people that managed them.
Their managers and the executives, top executives.
And what were the parents doing? Looking somewhere else.
No, the parents were not even traveling with them at one point. These were 14, 15-year-olds, and they were not part of the dynamics of the hotel and all that. They weren't even there. So, yeah, just trusting, your kid like that over. And
But it gets to a point where you're gonna ask your kid, like, what's going on? Are they treating you right? You need to call me. You need to let me know.
yeah, but the kids
Your
are
life is more
intimidating. If
important
you see
than
remember Gloria's episodes about what was going on when they were all living in the clan or in that group run by Sergio Andrade. The girls would call home. It was part of, like, he had it designed so that they would call home so that it seemed normal, but they're brainwashed. And that's why you get 13-year-olds and 12-year-olds, because you can work with their brain in a way where they were going to be loyal to you over their parents, to Sergio in this case, or to the producer, the manager. The girls chose to be loyal to him even over the parents. But he also would pick up girls that came from broken homes or that seemed somehow vulnerable, that were maybe especially poor, in circumstances where this would be such a big deal. So
with a specific profile.
It's a very predatory thing. They're looking for that profile.
Yeah, but at the same time, there are examples about when parents were actually involved, and they didn't let this happen. There was a girl
Yes.
that contacted us after we did the Gloria Trevi podcast episode, and she was like, "I was part of it. I left. That's why I'm not famous, or I'm not writing books and getting paid for interviews, because I didn't let that happen." Another example is Lucero, which is another big Mexican actress from the 80s. She was part of this, or she was probably the first one that Sergio Andrade was trying to get to be under his.
Well, he had done it to Cristal too, but she was like the first one that was really underage. That was really like 12. Cristal at least was 18 or something like that.
But there are examples of parents being involved, seeing these red flags, and taking actions. See what I'm saying? And there are examples, unfortunately, with the Gloria Trevi and these other girls, that even when there were red flags, even when they had the opportunity to leave, they didn't leave. So it's a personal decision. How much are you willing to take to get your dream,
to give
come
up
true?
of yourself, give up of your, integrity. Yeah, it is a personal decision for some parents. The kids, I don't know, because that's the whole issue, that since their brains are not developed enough,
I agree.
they can't make really a sound decision at that point.
But that's where the communication comes in. That's where parents come in. That's where education starts at home. Okay, so if you're little, you already start to.
But you're assuming
to
all
put on.
parents are like responsible parents,
No,
and you
of course
forget
not.
that parents are human
No.
beings that have
And
many
that's-
flaws, many issues, and
Yeah,
and it's a numbers game for these people. For the predators, they know it's like going to a nightclub. They know if they're gonna try to take advantage of someone in a nightclub, a man or a woman. They know it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
They know it might not work with 2 or 3, but then maybe
It'll
5
be
and 6,
somebody, yeah.
5 and 6 is gonna fall for it.
Yeah, this is the thing. Where my point is I think the parents are the ones that are more responsible. And yeah, like you said,
And they haven't been charged. It's interesting. I don't think that we've seen in any of the articles any accusations, formal accusations or charges of neglect, of child abuse. Been to juvenile court many times, and there's deprivation cases there, where that means that a child is not being taken care of by his parents or by whoever the legal guardian is. And it's interesting that I have not read of any of these parents of the child actors that have come out and said, I was abused, this, and that. There hasn't been an order, a law, a protective order, or I'm going to hold you accountable parent, because those are laws. There are deprivation cases all the time. There are cases for parents that are not giving the kids enough protection. They're not making them go to school, and here they are working all the time. You know what I'm saying? there are things in place, but at the same time, the entertainment industry, we're all like so amazed by it that we as a public turn a blind eye.
Of course, definitely. That's why, and you mentioned it, and I agree with you 100%. These type of people that work in the industry, they search for a specific profile of persons. A broken home, probably, dysfunctional families,
Negligent parents,
yeah,
irresponsible parents, young parents, maybe.
low income, blue collar, especially in Latin America. We're not going to get into that because that's very complex type, very different environment. But anyways, let's talk about real quick about Justin Bieber. Recently,
Or P. Diddy.
recently, Sean Combs, that's his name, also known as P Diddy or Puff Daddy,
And they're trying to involve
or
J-Lo too.
P Diddy or
Puff
Puffy
Daddy.
or whatever it is that he's been changing his name to. So his house in Miami was actually raided
By the feds.
by the feds. And how do you get this type of warrant? You get a warrant. A judge has to approve it, and for this, an investigation has to be done. And
Enough sufficient.
of course,
It warrants it. Like there is enough evidence, or there is
Yes.
enough something.
So why did his home in Miami and New York get raided? Well, to find, not to arrest anybody, to find actually information, to find clues, to get more information about an investigation that's already been held. He's been accused. He's actually had a few lawsuits from former workers that worked with him on in his studio or in his house, from South District, New York, that accuse him of human trafficking. Again, human trafficking could be a
Many
service,
forms.
labor, service, sexual, things like that. He's been accused of all of them.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, Justin Bieber's part of that.
yeah. So
Remember when Justin Bieber became very religious and he stopped even collaborating with Usher and all these things that we used to know that Usher and Justin Bieber were very, very tight. Even here in Atlanta, they both had homes here in Atlanta, and people would see them together all the time. And of course, Usher was the one that kind of promoted Bieber when he was little.
yeah, he signed him.
He signed him. So they were hanging out all the time, but all of a sudden they're not hanging out. And then they say it's because Bieber's mom found out about what was going on and totally removed him from that situation. And Justin Bieber started even trying to find God. Remember when he became highly, highly religious with his pastor and all that? He was a product also of that grooming, part of that same group with Puff Daddy and Usher and all of these that used kids like that. And not only they used them, they had videos of them. And, you know, just kind of, you do what I say or I
will not
show
make
these
you star.
videos. Yeah, it's all blackmail.
So, going back a little bit of history. So Usher, when he was 13 years old, he actually went to live with P. Diddy in his house. And there's an interview where he comes to Usher, gives an interview where he says that he saw a lot of things he did not want it to see at that age. That he was too young for all these things. In terms of drugs, alcohol, sexual interactions amongst people. And
J-Lo was part of it.
Yeah.
J-Lo was the girlfriend. Do you think she was not privy to some of these things, that she wasn't going to some of these parties, or did she not overhear things in conversations? They're starting to try to investigate her and see what her responsibility at that point when she finally left him. And J-Lo has a new kind of like musical. Have you seen it on Amazon that tells about her love story with Ben? But she does it like through like a musical video. It's called This Is Me Now. Yeah. But she does reference that. She references all her failed romances and how she finally got back with Ben, the love of her life. But she will reference artistically, because it's not like to the point, um, even Puff Daddy. Like you can see that relationship because you can see a scene where she comes in, there was a gun involved. I remember one time when they put Puff Daddy in jail, and she was somehow arrested just for a few hours, or she was detained. Let's not say arrested, but she was interviewed, and she was part of that investigation for a few hours. That's when she left him.
I'm sure she was aware of everything that was happening, but let's put a perspective to this. Why was she doing this? Because she was part of the clan. She was part of the
wanted
crew.
also the ascension.
Yeah. She is where she's now because Puff Daddy helped her.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. He made her albums. He helped with the commercial side, promotion, and things like that. And when you see MTV in the 99 or some shit like that, she's there with him, and they're all nice couple and things like that. She was seeing everything. And this is when Usher was a kid. And
she may have very well been a cover for him.
Oh, definitely.
Maybe, she wasn't really, it wasn't like a real relationship like that. She was just covering for all his other activities that he was having with little boys and stuff. But it was a working relationship of some sort. She was getting something out of it. He was getting something out of it.
What I do not understand is how Usher would bring Justin Bieber into this, knowing what he went through.
Because victims victimize. It's very well known in studies and research that victims that have been broken repeat the behavior. It's one way of them of dealing with that brokenness. It's common, very, very common. If you've been abused as a child, you have a tendency, some of them, to do the same. Because in their own distorted way, think about it. If you're a kid, if someone tells you that's love, if someone tells you that that's how it is, and you never really work through that, process that, then that's what I mean, let's be frank here. Even if it's a kid, I'm sure that, if you're 13, 14, and if someone's stimulating you sexually, there's some type of pleasure, and then kids blur those lines. They are like, they know it's wrong because it's inappropriate that this person is doing this to me. This should be more done with my 13-year-old girlfriend. They were like giggling and trying to explore things, that's the correct scenario. And that if you're doing it with a 35-year-old man, it's something very weird about that. But at the same time, there is some pleasure involved, and there is some protection, like, oh, this person gave me money, my first contract.
Yeah.
So that really messes up with their head of what protection is, what love is, what pleasure is. And you can see how they might carry it on themselves because they're already just very confused.
Yeah, especially in that environment, there's a party every day.
Mm-hmm.
You're exposed to these type of things. Free, well, probably not free, but included
alcohol and drugs that make you
men or women, whatever your preferences are, all day, every day.
The Playboy Mansion, remember when there was that reality show and you would get to see all the playmates, Holly and all that were married to Hugh Hefner?
Mm-hmm.
And all of that was the lifestyle that was very glamorized. Then they came out, the playmates, and saying what it really was living in that mansion, and it was horrible. All the abuse that they really felt as well. Remember the Surviving R. Kelly and all the stuff that came out?
So again,
it's very prevalent in the industry. I'm going to say it's a good 50-50 that if you're in the industry, something's going to happen to you like that.
And again, a lot of these things were happening and nobody was saying anything until like the 2000s. I mean, that's the truth about this.
And then maybe people were trying to say things, but if you didn't have the platforms like YouTube and the internet,
Yeah, you're right.
you know what I'm saying? You could just tell your neighbor or whatever, and then that just kind of stays hush hush and doesn't get a
Or if we
projection.
came out publicly, that would probably take you out of the industry.
Mm-hmm. But when with all these platforms that you can even do it anonymously and still reach a lot of people, you know, you can do a claim like that. You didn't have to go through newspapers because before the newspapers, the editors might have been friends with
Sure.
the producers. So it was really
Corruption.
hard. Corruption. The leaders were in it together. But now with all these platforms that we have available at our, you know, fingertips, that's when things become more prevalent and you start seeing all the exposes and all these documentaries that really show you what's going on. And it's sad, but I'm glad. I'm glad that it's come out. You know?
Well, TV overall, radio overall, a lot of these things are dying.
Exactly. I'm glad that
And-
this should die. Like parents will have no more excuses to just
There will
sign up their
always
kids
be-
and just
Yeah,
forget
like-
about them like that.
I mean, Usher, he was his legal guardian. So that means his family was, yeah, take him. You're going to make him a star? Take him. We don't want to know what's going on. We'll be okay.
It sounds like one of the third world country when someone like a foreigner comes and there's a family that's, you know,
Again, it's profiling. You're shooting for a specific
taking advantage of a
type
situation.
yeah, looking for a family that has a
Vulnerable-
lot
a
of
vulnerable
needs,
family.
and be like, hey, how much you get paid a month? I don't know, probably $2,000 between all of us. You're gonna get that a week, but I'm gonna make your kid a star, and he has to come with me. He or she.
Mhm.
A lot of parents are willing to do that, unfortunately,
You know,
even till this age.
and you know, in third world countries, a lot of parents just to not have one more mouth to feed because it's difficult for them. They will sell their kids, and they don't know what happens afterwards. They don't know if they're selling them to some kind of trafficking involving forced labor, or if it's sexual trafficking. They don't know. They just know that they came, took the kid, we took the money, one less mouth to feed, and that happens in the third world countries. But it's not that different from what you just described with Usher, where they just take the kid and nobody knew what happened.
This is in the 90s.
And money, exactly. And in the United States,
Yeah.
in a first world country, in the country of the world, the first country, powerful country in the world. So that I'm glad that it's been exposed. That at least there's less excuses for parents to not be aware.
And the information is out there.
And I think parents should be charged.
Oh, definitely.
I think that that's probably one of the next things that the industry could do, the government could do to protect these kids is to create some sort of mechanism where there is real enforcement to this neglect.
Yep. I think we're out of time, but you want to say goodbye to our friends? Veronica?
Yes, it's really just sad that we're talking about this, but you know,
It's part of our society.
part of our society. Let us know how you felt when you first found out about the stars that you watched, when you realized what they went through behind closed doors, what you felt towards them, and you know, what you think could be done for the future generations to protect them. Let us know.
Cool. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.